Hi, this is a little bit of a series on the channel. I'm not sure exactly how many parts there will be, but I have a lot to discuss, so it's probably going to be a couple dozen. I want to start talking about philosophy and ethics, and this is a very, very broad range of topics that has to do with how you approach and conceptualize things, as well as how you figure out what is good and bad about things. And the specific thing that I want to talk about is business, and specifically Muxan, so my own business. So I want to do a little bit of philosophy and ethics 101 in this video, so explaining what it is that I'm talking about. This has two sides of the coin. So one is I am not formally educated in these topics. I'm mostly self-taught. And that means that the definitions and the ideas that I use probably don't fully overlap with a proper course curriculum. The second thing is that most viewers probably don't have a rigid understanding of exactly what it is that I'm talking about. So also, not just now, but as we go along, I will try to define my terms and be as clear as possible about what I'm actually talking about. Now, to start some housekeeping as well, I will be shooting these videos completely flat. I'm not going to be another philosophy tube or that kind of stuff. I will be trying to cut it somewhat better than my usual videos, but the cuts, they will be jump cuts. I will not be producing, and I will be barely doing anything visual. So you can regard this as mostly a podcast, not necessarily an audio-visual medium. And that decision to do it this way, as the decision to shoot the rest of my videos kind of a random way, that is like an actual philosophical thing that I want to talk about as well. But we'll get into that when we get into it. So to start, what is philosophy? So I will be talking a lot about conceptualizing things. And the word conceptualization and conceptualizing has to do with how do you form a concept in your mind about something that we have a word for in language. This sounds very vague, and it is very vague. So conceptualization, this transfer of something in the world, something external to you, to something internal in you, that is basically what philosophy is about. So I conceptualize philosophy as a sort of structured way of thought. This is a very ancient type of definition of philosophy. So there are some rules that you can follow. Entire concept of using logic, so using premises, then having some kind of logical process, coming to a conclusion that if the premises are true, the conclusion will be true. This whole idea, that's philosophy. Well, that is a tool used by philosophy. So that is how we tend to structure our thought. We tend to try to get to logical conclusions from some set of preconditions that we thought of. But those preconditions, pretty much free to choose. However, as you get into philosophy, and especially as you get into the really fundamental philosophy, it has the tendency to come to fairly rigid conclusions from almost whatever reasonable set of preconceptions you have. So there is a method to the madness, and this is the nice thing. It seems like the way humans work, the way our social structures work, and the way that we conceptualize the very foundational thoughts and morals of our society, they all tend to sort of coalesce around very universal conclusions, social conclusions, you could say. And this is really interesting to me, because this means that there's this seemingly chaotic thing about social structures and language, all of which are very ill-defined, but yet we mostly are able to, even without employing any of the logic and any of the rigidity of proper academic philosophy, we're able to communicate these really complex ideas and these really, really interesting social dynamics, not just between people in the same group, same general friend group or something, but across cultures, across the world, and across time. So yeah, At its core, philosophy is just a structured way of going about thinking about stuff. Now, philosophy is not just that. Obviously, that would be a very fast course if you ever did a philosophy major or if you actually went to university for this. Philosophy is also very much a large set of examples of how people have tried looking at things in a structured way and came to this kind of framework, things like utilitarianism. And now we get into ethics. There are other branches of philosophy, so there's things like the philosophy of science. How do we do science? Well, there's a branch of philosophy thinking about what the best way is to get to good conclusions and in a structured way find scientific truths. The same way goes for ethics. Ethics is this subset of thinking in a structured manner about questions of right and wrong. Constructing frameworks in which you can use a relatively simple checklist of items to figure out if something is good or bad. So, a standard example would be utilitarianism. Utilitarianism is an ethical framework where you look at the utility of an action. So, if you have, for instance, a choice of 5 different actions, and these actions have 20%, 40%, 60%, 80%, and 100% utility, the correct way of going about your day is choosing that 100% utility action. That would be a good action, and then the 20% would be a bad action, and the rest in between. There's a continuum, obviously. But there's this possibly mathematical way of looking at the world, or at least looking at questions of good and bad through the lens of utilitarianism, and there's a bunch of other ethical frameworks that you can use to motivate ethical considerations. So in very, very, very short terms, that is what I see philosophy and ethics to be. So after this cringe fest of an explanation of philosophy and ethics, let's just real quick get into the business side of things as well. How do I apply philosophy and ethics to business? And what is business really? Obviously, there's just the language aspect of this. So I will be going into all kinds of tangents like this, right? Doing your business might, in some circumstances, mean defecating, going to the toilet. But obviously, I am talking about running a corporation. So running some kind of economic entity. Yeah, really, how would you define this? A business is all kinds of things, and the way you conceptualize this and the way you think about a business will greatly impact how you run the business, obviously. So next there is this concept of a business providing a service to our customers. So we do that. Our customers pay us money and we provide them with batteries or chargers or that kind of stuff. But not just that. As a business, we also provide service. And also, as a business, we provide employment to our employees, right? That is another like direct business to person kind of interaction that businesses have. So in this sense, thinking about business as an entity that is made of people that provide services to other people, this is a person-to-person interface, right? This is ripe for things like ethics because we're thinking about how we treat other people and how we treat ourselves. But then again, at least from a legal perspective, we are limiting our exposure to liability from outside. So you could say that this is a really cold and business-like way of looking at business, that we provide services in exchange for money, and not just that, but also in exchange for agreement about all kinds of legal stuff, which really isn't very human-like at all. If you've ever read legal documents, I've had to do that a lot of times, they don't seem like a very, very firm ground for human-like interactions. But of course, the business is not just about day-to-day operations, employment, products. A business is also a place where, for instance, investments can happen, and a place where a lot of money is slushing around, and a place that causes all kinds of other fiscal, monetary things. In other words, a business is an economic entity. So the economy as a whole basically has infinite demand. Everybody would like everything, right? If I could have a planet by myself, completely inhabited with all the services on there, I would gladly take a planet. This infinite demand has to be addressed and somewhat fairly, arguably, distributed according to very finite resources. So economics is all about doing this kind of arbitration between demand and supply. And in that way, like, a business is a completely different concept, right? So do we really want to conceptualize the business mainly as this economic thing, or mainly as this human interaction thing, or something in between, or even something else? There are many other angles you can take with business. And then this concept of business, the way you have constructed this in your mind, also impacts very much what you see as a good and a bad outcome of different decisions within the business. So yeah, that is basically what I want to talk about. And there are so many angles and so many large and small things that I want to talk about in this context. I think it's going to be fun. I highly doubt that many people are going to watch this, but that's fine. Like, this is a niche topic for a niche audience. So thank you very much if you made it so far in the video, and I hope you will be interested in seeing more of this. Alright, bye.